Pleased to be here.
Well, I'm glad we finally get a chance to talk again.
Do you recall that so many years?
That was when I read the description,
Yeah.
I vaguely recalled it. So, and now
Yeah.
seeing your face, I recall it more.
Well, that's an amazing memory, because my whole story is going to be somebody who cannot remember the past for the life of me. And the discussions that you have with people, your remarkable memory and ability to pull everything you've ever learned. And it's Jordan Peterson-esque that you are delighted with him and have some kind of similar. I don't know if I'm using my.
You sound okay.
Well, okay, because I was going to put I was connected with this to my computer, but it seems like it's coming through it's going through the computer. So
I've got, hang on a second. I had a date confusion with a rando who stopped by.
Okay.
Got technical things going on. Hang on a second. I'll get it fixed up right.
You're having the technical difficulties I wish I had. I think from you, I felt like this is a direction that I have to go, and I'm, somewhat forward thinking. So I want to do it, but I also struggle with getting things in place without someone helping me. That this kind of ministry is, I just love what you do.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, let's start with a little bit of biography from you, and then you can take it wherever you want to take it.
I wrote it all down because I had to ask my sister some questions about my own childhood because I couldn't remember.
That's dangerous. If I asked my sister questions about my childhood, she would give me answers, and I know they would very much be
shaded a little.
Oh, my sister, it's like we grew up with two different worlds. She'll tell stories and it's like, that didn't happen.
Yeah. I just watched a video about Calvin and Hobbes, and he was talking about how he presented Hobbes as both a toy or a stuffed animal and a live animal. And when he's questioned, we think it's all Hobbes' imagination or Calvin's imagination, but he said, no, I want to present that the world is seen by different people in different ways, and everybody else sees. But it wasn't just Calvin's mind that he was playing off of. It was that the world is interpreted, and your sister, would see the world of Paul Vanderklay as
yes, she
something
does.
You don't remember.
She does. She has a YouTube channel and a podcast too, and apparently one of the podcasts, she told her story, and my mother listened to it, and she said, oh, you got to listen to it. So I should listen to it sometime. I'm sure I would listen to it and say, no, it wasn't like that.
Yeah. Well, my thing is, so I'm 60. What is today? 2021. I'm 61. So I've had a long history, and it's a history that where I guess I've always struggled to remember, but I credit a lot with some segment of my life being involved with drugs, and maybe a little too much things playing on my own memory, which is one of the symptoms or one of the consequences. But anyway, my past. So I moved to Pennsylvania. I'm in Pennsylvania. I moved from Indiana to Pennsylvania when I was about 13. But before, I don't consider myself churched. I consider myself familiar with Christianity. My dad was plugged into some different things, seeking out this Jesus or this, who's in charge here. And his own childhood I have him in my house now. At the beginning of January, my mother had, and both of them had COVID. My mother was hospitalized and she passed in January. So then I'm somebody who tries to figure things out and put together the pieces. And I brought my dad in, and we sold his house. And now I'm trying to put that piece together, which is very complicated. And dad, who's distant, is way more pleasant and comfortable than dad, who's close. And that's a sign of, it tests your, how much are you like Jesus? It turns out, maybe not much.
Dostoevsky made that observation that it's always easier to love in the abstract.
Oh yeah. Yeah. As it turns out, you might be right. So I don't think I was real churched. My sister reminded me that we did go to church, but for the life of me, I don't remember church, Sunday school. Don't remember it. Came to Pennsylvania. So kind of a very working class, probably close to the lower class level. And that was, I think, common back in the 60s when my dad was a truck driver and maybe worked at a couple of factories, but mostly he's been a truck driver. And played in the neighborhood. That's what we did. Moved to Pennsylvania and got caught up in the drug world. It's the 70s, for goodness sakes, and all that is rampant.
Now,
So
when you say in the drug, I mean, what? I don't want to be too nosy, but there's lots of different kinds of drugs.
Yeah.
I mean, psychedelics are over here, and then
yeah. Well, I'm one of the guys who knows about psychedelics, and okay. I played the whole gamut. And as it turns out, the way I tell my story, because I like to talk to students, and some of the dramatic things will catch their attention. And so I was talking, and I have to mention the scooter gang, who's one of my, I'm a youth leader. So the scooter gang is one of my ministry outreach things. And I want to mention them because they might watch the video. So the scooter gang in our church is called the Grind Church. So it's where they go and go grind on the sidewalk. So the Grind Church, that's where I.
Wow.
Yeah. So I came to Pennsylvania, and I got, to me, smoking and all these things where you're using substances that aren't natural. So to me, I get that it's a gateway. Not everybody says that, but to me, like anything you explore, once you are in the door, you find, are there other things that are, that can advance my interest? So smoking and marijuana is an easy entrance, and then speed, amphetamines, and then just continuing to advance. And to me, all people like to get better at what they're doing, and it doesn't matter what your hobby is. To me, you try and get better, and you want to perform well. So that's even, to me, abusers they get caught up in something, and they're with the cool kids and whatever, and then somebody says, well, this is pretty good. So I did everything except shooting up, because that seemed like the line that was where you're turning into a pro and you start beating up old ladies and stealing. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not a good kid, but I don't want to go to jail. I have some kind of nose for trouble. And you could always see when things are getting, when tempers are flaring and you see a fight coming and you're like, oh, I'm not really a fighter. I think I'll take a few steps back. So I always had a nose for the appearance of a good kid or whatever, but I'm sneaky and I'm just playing whatever. So that was a good portion of my life. So I wanted to get through that. But then what happened
when you
was,
say a good portion of your life, how much of a
14,
portion? Okay.
14 to about 27. And at some point in there, I met Jesus around 24 years old. So I'll get to that. Is
okay.
The thing that when you're a user or an addict, and I don't claim, addiction's a funny thing, but when you're a user, you can see what's going on.
Yeah.
And you only have to fool one person. If you're saying, no, I'm fine, you can see this probably isn't wise. And I would sit up, when you do cocaine, one of the weird things is there's something called the cocaine blues. It's a bit of a pricey drug. It's a great natural feeling, exuberant high. But then about 3 a.m. when you've blown about $300 and there's nothing left, it's not long lasting. And then all of a sudden the reality, because you never escape, you never change your life. You start getting this, well, I'm out of drugs. My life's the same. Now I'm a little broker, and I'm with somebody who's kind of fun to hang out with when you're both on drugs or whatever. So you get the blues kind of. So where was I going with that? So I'm doing this stuff. Oh, and then so I'm doing everything that I can. But then about 24 years old, I think it was then that I started trying to escape. And I was thinking, I got involved in truck driving a little bit, and with my dad, he gave me the start. And it was a 2-man crew that set up equipment to hold carpet or vinyl rolls that you'd see at any vinyl store, or Lowe's, or wherever. So I get involved in that, trying to escape. And then I get introduced to Jesus by a couple friends who are in the crowd that I'm hanging with. They're people who are using, and kind of a party crowd. And one of them he's like in an adopted home, or his parents are there, but he's with an aunt and uncle or something like that. And he goes to church, and maybe he invited me, or he told me something about Jesus. And I'm like, I need some aim, and it's the hierarchy. You see the good person that you want to follow. I'm like, yeah, I'm interested in that. And another guy had come out of Teen Challenge, which is nearby where I live. He was a graduate, and he was doing drugs with me because he graduated, but it didn't change anything. Because he could talk the talk. He was some kind of scammer. He could talk the talk, and he would give me the spiel because he could tell me what the program taught him. And I'm like, wow, you're laying that out, and it's pretty convincing. So in some way, I'm introduced to Jesus at about 24. And then I really start trying to think, what do I do to change things? And I think that's when I got into truck driving. I broke out of, the AA idea of people, places, and things that trap you in the world. If you can get away from those, it gives you a clearer head. It can, you can change your life. You can't if you're still hanging out at the bar with all your buddies. You're going to drink some booze. So I tried to escape a couple times. I'd live on the road for a while, I'd come back home, and I'd hang out with the people, places, and things. And it wasn't really working. And then at about 27, after really a pretty long commitment, and then I was trying to kind of break free. And I don't believe, addiction is a weird thing to talk about. I believe I was making choices almost all the time, because I quit smoking. You can break addiction, but it's hard, and it depends on your personality and whatever. I don't know. So I'm 27, and then at one party, at some point a year or so previous, there were a couple girls, and Shelly was this just beautiful young woman, and my buddy was talking to her, and I'm like, oh, I'm turned into the wingman, and I'm like, and I never had this great connection with figuring out women. Still don't, as it turns out. So Shelly and Ron, and I don't know if you would ever hear this, but it was a turning point when Shelly and Ron get engaged, and they're getting ready to be married, and they're a young couple, and she's just delightful, just bubbling, effervescent, pretty, and everything, that is appealing.
Yeah.
And then at one point, I get a phone call that Shelly's killed in a car crash, and like 2 weeks before they're to get married. And so, again, every time I tell the story, still, it's, it just comes back, and I'm ready to cry. But so I go to Ron, and it's the first time I get this kind of view into the, the eyes, the window of the soul, and you're looking deep into this place that's just been emptied. And it's very tragic. You see it, live it out. So, yeah. So the pastor was going to wed them, perform the funeral. And Ron wasn't my close friend, but he was in the group of people, and I knew him. And at that time, I wanted to serve Jesus in something. I didn't know what that was. And I'm not giving myself much credit, but I thought, when I saw him, I had no words. I couldn't say anything that could be of any use. I'm just, all you say is, I'm sorry. And I had nothing to do with it, but I don't know what to do. So I decided, well, I'll hang with Ron for a while he just sits in this grief and wrestles. And we went out to the intersection. He's looking for some reason. Who can I blame? What can I say about this? And we just hang out. And all of a sudden, Ron's going to church with this pastor. And all of a sudden, I'm introduced to the church in a way that's new. Whatever my childhood was, all of a sudden now I'm thinking, well, I love people. And here's all these people that want to commune with Jesus. I'm like, I'm in. I'll party with you in the way you party. You're loving each other, you're having fun, you're doing missions, you're have game nights or whatever. And I'm planted, and since that time, I'm a church man. It's like I am all in. And the strange thing of the church in '87 is I'm kind of a hippie looking dude. I played guitar. I just that was the end of my drug use. It was just people, places, and things completely changed. None of them were smoking weed that I know of. But that it was a time well before any processing of how can we give this person a leadership role. I got right into youth ministry, and it's like from drug user right into youth ministry, no background check. He seems okay. and that's the world of that time. It wasn't a scared world. It was a still daring and bold people, sort of, whatever it was. So then I got into youth ministry, and I was in music ministry, and I was everything they did. I said, yeah, I'll help with anything you're doing, BBS, mission trips. So then I moved along in that route and ended up going to another church that was just closer, and a pastor who was ready to plug people in, and he plugged me into the youth group. And I've been a youth leader for 33 years.
Wow.
A youth leader of some sort. But still, the same person. You grow up, and I struggled in school. I got caught up in drugs, so I'm some quirky youth leader that not everyone's on board with what I'm saying we should do. But you're talking about these wrestling issues, and a lot of the things you said I'm playing off the video that you did. It was about 4 videos ago, and I actually am following closely all this world. I'm one of the people who is watching every video that you do, the 3-hour ones, and then I tell other people to watch.
There are about 2,000 to 3,000 of you that watch almost all the videos. It's really bizarre. Yeah. I can't figure it out.
Well, it really fits everything that I'm questioning are the things that you're talking about. And it was Peterson, but I think you're more than Peterson, because you're staying the course and you're walking people through it. And in some way, Peterson is a rock star, and you watch a concert and you're like, hey, I might or might not have his poster on the wall. I actually do not. But the real thing is if you watch a rock band, but then somebody, a friend of yours will play music with you, and you'll sit around a campfire and actually play music. It's music that you want. So the wrestling is what we want, and you're actually committed for the long term. And Peterson has his own things he has to do. But your video a couple videos ago, I watched it like 4 times because I'm like, or 6 times. I don't know.
Which video was this?
It was the one about politics being the death of the church. And
yeah.
And you talked about some things I'm interested in. And what I want to talk about, one of the things I thought was interesting is when you talk, you'll do an interview with a rando. So you did the interview with Nick, and you went through some real interesting wrestling. But then you not only talk with Nick, but then you talk about your talk with Nick. And then you think, what is it all? And that's the thing that was interesting. So I want to get to that talk. There's something I want to add there. But you also talked about pastors and the ones who are gifted, because we're looking at this hierarchy and we're seeing people who we want to emulate, and your church planner discussion. And, why can't I plant a church? Because I ended up being a youth leader. And about 4 years ago, someone clued me in that if I would get in, I'm in the Methodist church. And, I'm actually a follower of Jesus, and I'd go anywhere, because I was in a UCC church, then I was in a Methodist church. I have friends who are in different churches, but I'm a paid staff, which is a unique gig, and which is the delight of my life, to be thinking about and be with young people and try and tell them about the greatest joy they can have, or can you find any place that you can open your heart and not have someone stab it? Or what is it that we have to guard our hearts so carefully? What even are they that you don't dare reveal them except to Jesus, or you try and get to that point. It's a long process. In my scooter gang, I'm trying to connect to them, and they're not hanging at the church, the grind church, to hear Jesus stories. But I'm like, look, you're grinding on my sidewalk. I'm going to tell you a little story. and they're
grind if you can't do the time.
So you get to that stuff. But so a few years back, let's see, I think I got through everything in my childhood. So now we're at now. A few years back, someone said if I would get into the program, the Methodists have you can be an ordained elder and go through seminary and whatever. And I'm some guy who finds back doors. I'm the guy who's playing the system in some way and just looking like a nice guy. And I'm like, yeah, you can trust him. Sure, he just came off of years of whatever. But you can trust him. So 4 years ago, they said if I get in the local licensed pastor program, there may be an opening, an opportunity for me to pastor, because I started looking around for places to rehearse or practice giving testimony, because I want a little more. I want to practice. So I gave testimony in another church, and then someone told me, get in the program, and then an opening for a quarter-time pastor opened up right next door, a couple miles down the road. And I got plopped in there as someone who's in the program, but is not in any way. It's like my youth ministry. They plop me in, and I'm like, I'll do it. And now every week at quarter time, there's very little expectations outside of preaching. I'm like, well, I can try and tell the gospel and practice. And it's another thing that's, there's no way I belong in this course, because I aim for nothing like this. I don't even know where I'm aiming. And when Peterson talks about going through a field and you have to have you're aiming somewhere, I'm just meandering around. I'm looking at butterflies. And I keep landing in places that are so wonderful for me. And it's, this ministry at the church to preach every week. Even if you're not good at it, if you want to do it, you'll get better.
Yeah.
But even if you want to do it, and even if you have, I tell them this, look, if I was a ball player and I got one little bloop single every 3 at bats, I'd be $1 million player.
Yep.
So I need to get one good sermon, maybe out of 3, maybe out of 4, I'm a pro. And they don't even have to be good. Bloop single, I walk on base, whatever the standards are in the world. It's very strange. And I wanted to get to the other thing. So I told you about that. So I want to let you talk a little bit, because I want to wrestle with you a little bit about this idea of hierarchies. Because one of the things I keep talking about is I'm some kind of average character, and I get into positions that are like, there's no way I was aiming for it. I was not well trained for it. And I'm not the dude at the church who's the big guy that you were talking about in that video, the church pastor who got kicked out and started another 2000.
Oh, Driscoll,
yeah. And I've watched Driscoll, and he's got a gift.
Oh yeah.
So, and in some way, people want to emulate that. And the same with the other 2 pastors you talked about. It's not going to come to me, but you talked about mega church pastors, and they're at the top of the hierarchy, and everyone wants to be like them. And I'm thinking, what do you do with the people that aren't going to be like them? How do you say you can be a scrub player and work with Jesus, tell these stories, and it's the bottom of the hierarchy? And I'm thinking of a pyramid. I'm like, the whole pyramid rests on all of the people who aren't good enough, and will never get up that pyramid.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about that idea of Jesus calling people to be to lose their life, or to the first shall be last.
Yeah.
And I've just got a couple of stories with that, but that's the thing I'm trying to figure out. How do I say something about people giving up things that the hierarchy is really for succeeding in this world? and giving up on that success, coming back down the pyramid, is part of the gospel. And I think that's one of the things that we're stuck with in churches that have not told the right message, because we want to be good people, and that means getting better at getting to the more like Jesus, because Jesus is at the very top. And I think you get there at the top and you're like, Jesus, I am so close to you right now. And he's at the bottom saying, no, I'm way down here.
Yeah.
And whatever you're doing is a Tower of Babel, or, and even Peterson building from the ground up, when the miracle happens from, some mystery that God drops on you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was the main thing that I wanted to get to, was this flip. And I want to get to something with Nick too, but I want to not talk the whole time.
I get to talk lots. I have hours of me talking on my channel. I like listening to you. I'm going to record it's 3+ years into my channel, and I haven't recorded an introduction video to explain my channel to people, which is a real problem. So I'm going to do that today. But this to me is a high point of the week, getting to hear your story and getting a vision. Yeah. But what you say about the hierarchy is just so true. And it's part of the reason if you gain a degree of celebrity, even tiny little internet celebrity. So my sister Ruth was talking about how her YouTube channel is on, right now it's on Primitive Home. It's been on 2-3 different things over the last while. And she goes into people's houses, and it's decorating the certain style, and she takes videos. And so she went somewhere. And so her name is Ruth Huizinga, but on her YouTube, she's Ann Clay, just kind of riffing off her maiden name and her middle name and her maiden name. And so someone's like, oh, Ann Clay's here. And she's like, she's loving the celebrity. But so even if you have a little bit of celebrity, people will, want to meet you, and all that's wonderful. But the real joy for me is introducing people like you to the rest of the world, because the truth is, what you say about the pyramid is exactly right. And to me, churches that I've been in, so often it's and I can name people from Livingstone's story here, who these are salt of the earth people. They give, they sacrifice, they loved. One guy that I baptized in his 70s, actually, his name was HJ. And, it's just, I remember coming to the church fairly early. His wife had been coming to church. She was a ER nurse, and she just didn't have patience for fools. And so back when I got here at the church, I had to, part of my job was I had to pick songs for the service. And so I did. And there was this other, Nina was picking songs for all this crazy stuff in churches. But Hattie asked me, she said, like, Nina picks those songs at the beginning and you pick those songs at the middle and the end. I said, yeah. Nina picks better songs. And HJ was her husband. And when I first did a house visit with them, he had all these Bibles out, and Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses were coming to the door. And he had all these, he's just trying to figure things out. And then he was 72 when we baptized him, and his wife died of pancreatic cancer. And he had a son who had mental illness issues, and he was in and out of trouble, and was trying to help. And then he got cancer, and he was a greeter at the door for years of the church. He would just smile and hand a bulletin, and these people, they're, God fills the world with them, and they, and his glory is in them. But because of these hierarchies and these pyramids, we don't get to see them unless you get down to the bottom of the pyramid and you shut up and open your eyes and pay attention, and you begin to realize, wow, God has richly blessed us. And if you're quiet and patient enough, you'll see the glory. So that's very true.
Yeah. It's hard to preach, though, because I always feel like I'm talking to people who have income and they're successful, and I'm thinking, what do I say to somebody that's in some way, every time I speak, at the end, I'm like, well, I should do on my channel or I should do a stream that says what I meant to say, because every time I say something, I'm like, I didn't really get it. And how do you even say to people, I want you to, the thing I want from you is to give up all the things that you love, because we build our little kingdoms, and that's all passing, and everyone knows it. They hear the same thing every week. And yet we're so planted in the earth. That's the other thing I keep coming up with, is that we're stuck, is that we do only understand the hierarchy and getting better and being a better person because we're so stuck in the earth. We're planted here. And I long for Jesus, but don't pull me out right now, because I kind of like what you gave me. And that strange dilemma that I even wanted to say, when you said something about what's the matter in the video that I was watching, and it dawned on me that you're talking about material world, and even words that you use when you preach, what's the matter? Well, the matter is what makes up this world. But what's the spirit is the thing that actually holds everything up, but we see the matter.
Yeah.
And what's the matter is our key. And what's underlying is, it's too hard to get to in some ways. And it's very strange to preach and keep getting, more swings. And to me, I like your videos because you have enough time to really, and you're also, deliberate or disciplined enough to, very disciplined at how you get us from one point to another. And you have the time.
I try to be disciplined. I often fail.
The time is important. And what I'm pushing for in my preaching is I need more time, because 20 minutes, I do not know how to say something. Every week, I'm like, well, I just have one more thing to say. And they know that means that I do not have one more thing to say. And I have to cut it off. And I often say, well, I didn't finish what I wanted to say, but it ends with Jesus. And it's like something like that. And we got to move on. So, yeah. But it's such a wonderful thing to have to be able to swing, get another at bat. And as long as they'll have me, I'll keep swinging. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was, so Melody, my niece, I wanted to mention Melody. So Melody I think she's 12 now. And she had a traumatic brain injury, and it's my great niece, I guess you would call it. So it's my niece's daughter, Melody. And when she was under 1, I think, she had a brain injury, and she is special needs, and will never, I think she'll need assistance her whole life. She's not 12.
Yeah.
But she's the delight. And one of the great joys is my sister joined us at church. And it wasn't clear that she had that in her life. And she's in some way supportive of me. And then she brought Melody. So Melody had a fall. It's her daughter's child. And I have to watch how I say everything. But when Melody was hurt, my sister swooped in and said, "You're not going to raise this child," and took the child because she was injured, took her away from my niece. And they didn't fight too much. She just came in, and she had the mama bear that we better not fight this animal.
Yeah.
So she came in and raised Melody, and started coming to church probably 3 years ago. And Melody, one of her things, and this gets to the bottom of the hierarchy, Melody is such a joy for the church. It's an aging church, the church I preach at, maybe 40 or so people, and very few young people. It really is that average age of 50, or because the aging population really weighs heavy on the scale. So Melody will come around, and her thing is, she'll go up to people and say, "What's your name?" And they'll say, "My name is Jane." And she says, "Hi, Jane." And then she turns back to my sister, "That's Jane." And my sister says, "Yes, that's Jane." And then she'll do this to everybody. And The people she'll have said it to people 10 or 20 times, week after week.
Yeah.
And my sister will take her out. And she told a story the other day of, I think she was at a meat counter or some kind of deli or something. And the woman was cleaning up and she was, just upset and, at a low point. She just is, it's a hard job. She wasn't appreciated. It's, she's in a dour mood. And Melody just says, "Hi, what's your name?" Or just says, "What's your name?" And she's all of a sudden, all the clouds lifted in this beautiful interaction with what Jesus is calling us to, which for the life of us, how do you tell somebody, I want you to be more like a disabled person and give up all your status and come? And wouldn't it be something if people just came up to you and just with a wide open heart, no agenda, no status to lose, that you're some kind of hero in her eyes. She just wants to know who you are. And it's the most beautiful thing, and the church loves her. And I want her to be like a greeter, give her a little vest or something that she is in some way exactly what we're aiming for. But for the life of us, we can't preach it or teach it. And it's the mystery that God reveals, this glory in the broken places, and it's so amazing. So I wanted to mention Melody.
I'm glad you did. We have Jill. We have Jill. Jill does that. Jill's got to be close to mine. She's in her 40s, I think. She's disabled. She's been disabled, and she's a daughter of a couple of people now. One's Fred's in his 90s. Jean probably not yet, but she can't get the vaccine because she had an illness a number of years ago. But their disabled daughter Jill, they bring her to church, and same thing. Suddenly in that interaction, our pretense and our hurry and our busyness and all of these things that we think are so important, they all just, you set them all aside. And suddenly it's like, oh yeah, why am I getting in the way of myself? Why am I really this important? Is all these cares, do they really matter? Oh, that's beautiful. It's beautifully told. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's and when you're preaching and trying to get to that place, it's almost happens sometimes whimsically but even the opportunity to just keep thinking and to live this life it's such a blessing to just be able to do this and to have time to watch Paul Vanderklay videos and wrestle with what is God calling us to, and what is it to be a representative of Jesus, and what does all that mean? Because it's not an easy task. And working with the Scooter Gang, I can definitely figure I'll be insulted and I might look like Jesus because I'll be insulted. I'll stick it out and I'll bear that cross, and they're not interested, and I have to keep trying to find lost sheep, and they're for sure there, and they keep coming back, and I'm like, oh, I'll work this angle.
Usually at their own timing.
You have to in some way plant seeds and be able to allow them to grow in a way that's God's work. It's not ours. I liked when you said about what's the woman that midwife, that there's we can be a midwife, but God does this strange work, and it doesn't, we don't get too much credit in the
and they're not on a fairly predictable 42-week pattern. Sometimes they, one of the things I learned from my father's ministry, he was at his first church for 36 years. There's time is important, and sometimes people need decades, and that's okay. So don't be afraid of decades. This is God's world. It's not ours. We can trust him. So let him do his work. Don't get in the way.
But get in the way we do.
Yes, we do.
and that's where I'm thinking we're stuck, and I keep thinking I think I have to preach a simple gospel, because I don't know that we've done the first step yet. And it's you keep having them, and storytelling, you can figure out how do you tell these stories. And you look at scripture and there are some stories that are easy to tell. I just went through Genesis, which was hard. I did my own like Peterson lecture going through Genesis, and it was a mess. It was not easy. The stories are too big. I got 20 minutes. I'm thinking, here's what God is revealing. And I want to say something a little nuanced, a little different. I'm actually going into Job now. And yeah, I want to challenge it. And I love it. I love Job. To me, Job is it's such a wild story.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, strange to be in this, in ministry, and you're trying to think, how do these things connect? How does Jesus show up in Job? And it's like, well, I don't know. But I was thinking, because of the Satan and God interaction, and then he is released somehow to Job. I was thinking, Satan isn't mentioned in Joseph's story, but that, I might connect and say, what is it with Joseph that he had so much twists and turns that all was going wrong? And I think there's something to that has to be part of what I tell, is there are these powers and principalities that aren't always mentioned, but they're always in play.
Yeah.
And Joseph had a pretty rough go.
Yeah.
And we just, it's pretty bad, and it's an extended bad stroke of luck that everybody hates him.
Yeah.
And then in the end, it's like a dream come true. The dream that he had initially comes true in the end, and it's not at all what anyone predicted. And the plot twists are just ridiculous, and always, there's another turn, and it turns out it's like they are bowing down to him, but he didn't want them to bow down there. Yeah. And he's not some ruler trying to dominate them, that they were so angry and jealous. He's saving their life, and he's not taking credit. He's like, it's God that did it. This wasn't my plan.
Yeah.
To go to jail and to be accused of rape or whatever. This isn't the way I worked it out. and I get that, because my life is this thing that I don't have a great plan in place. And Peterson, in some sense, wants you to lay out this plan. It's like, well, as it turns out, you cannot have a plan at all. And that's I think the bottom of the pyramid is these people who are like, I'm just trying to get by.
Yeah.
And if I can be any use, and they're open to that. I don't have a lot of plans. Same with Melody. It's like, well, I didn't have a lot of plans, so now you're useful.
Yeah.
Because I have too many plans to go to a food bank and help. I have big goals and ambitions, but I do admire that. My daughter watched Simone Biles as she came into my daughter. I have two children. I didn't tell you that. I got married late, and that's I won't get into that, but that's its own wreck. I do have train wrecks and nothing but train wrecks in my life, and God keeps using me. But my daughter, I have a 13, and I married late. A 13 and an 8-year-old, and they're wonderful. My daughter was watching Simone Biles, and I totally believe that the hierarchy and were planted in the earth, and Simone Biles is just a wonderful person to watch and admire. Where was I going with that? But in some way, we won't be her, because she had to dedicate everything. And she's still, I think, a Christian woman, and just sweet and tenderhearted, and every wonderful thing that I want to be. Simone Biles, I want to be like that. And successful and popular and a champion of the world. But I'm stuck where I'm stuck. And I clearly don't have the motivation to do that many backflips. And, do all the things that she had to dedicate, 15 years of her life, totally dedicated. And then have all the gifts besides.
Yeah.
These people who are successful. There's a lot going into that. They were given a lot of gifts. They have a lot of the right things and the right circumstances, and the right people open doors. And and somehow I want to minister to. I want to say, I want to minister to. Let's just try and hit average. Let's just try and hit some very low thing and say, can I get enough in place that I can still be useful?
Yeah.
How do I not have too much on my plate, that I'm too busy to be? And even when Jesus wants us, in weakness, God will shine through.
Yeah.
It's like, so my weaknesses, I'm like, there's somehow a badge of honor, because for sure it's not me if good things happen, because it's clear I don't have all the things in place to say, for people to say, yeah, you are amazingly gifted. I'm like, yeah, I'm average. I learned to play guitar, but I got to the level where I can play pretty good, but I did special music on Sunday and my voice is pretty average. There's another guy that does special music and he's really gifted and he's just got a beautiful velvety tone and he plays guitar and he'll do music and everyone will be a little weepy and they'll clap. I did my special music and then I hit my last note and then a couple of people go, a little clap. I'm like, yeah, I know, this is my life. Everyone's crying. They're not like, thank you for that. They're guitar down and walk back. And I know it. And it's like, well, but I want you to know that that's the call is you do your average work, because now God will get any kind of glory.
Yeah.
I don't get too much glory.
Yeah.
So I don't have to struggle with that. Where are we at here for time?
Oh, got another 5 minutes.
Okay, well, I wanted to mention one other thing was you had talked with Nick, and then you had your talk about the talk with Nick, and you talked about, well, the thing I want to say about this was one of my favorite artists was Jennifer Knapp, and she had a big
Christian career. I love Jennifer Knapp.
Oh, she was her heart was laid out, and her
I know,
was so moving, and I just loved her. One time I went to a concert, me and a buddy, and it was a youth. We went to a Jennifer Knapp concert that was local, and man, I adore her. And we're front row, and it's a small venue, so she's like right next to us, right in front of us, and then she plays her concert, and then at the end she stops, and then she has a pick in her hand, and the team that was with me, sticks his hand out, and she puts the pick in his hand. And I'm like, what? I'm the one who loves you. So I get the leftovers, and I'm like, but so I love Jennifer Knapp, and her music was so powerful and so heartfelt and then she dropped out of the scene. She just disappeared.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what in the world?
Yeah.
And nobody knows what happened. And then a couple of years later, she started touring again, and she came out as that day.
Yep.
And I went and saw her,
and
everything changed, because now she was in some way affirmed that it's when she was singing, she had a hidden pain that God, she's crying out to God, can you reach me? Can you heal me?
Yeah.
And it was so extraordinarily beautiful that this pain and torture she was going through. And now that she's in some way affirmed and says, no, it wasn't sin. It was that you didn't understand, and you didn't in some way affirm who I am. And the power of her music, I don't think I care that much about her music now, and I don't think she'll be what she was.
No, I know.
She was a sinner, in some way, great pain. And that sin, we don't want to call it, the church wants to say, well, we'll affirm, we won't call it. But there's something about the hardship, and you have it in the same way as the old Negro spirituals, where you're, people in great pain. Their hearts
great art.
So they're so, it's all heart, it's all longing, it's the most beautiful things, and you don't want to put people in pain so that they can give you some good songs, but there's some connection that when it became not sin, when it wasn't her deep stress or crying out to God, when it became, I don't know, accepted behavior, that something was lost. And that's something was, go ahead.
That's just so strange. It's but you're right. You're right.
And when I work with students, that's one of the real battles that students have, is because they, for sure, the race issues, they've gotten past some of them. They didn't grow up with the tensions. They're still there, but in the same way with affirming that they have some they don't have a past.
Yeah.
And, you know, I have to talk to them and be very cautious of the lines that I draw.
Yeah.
Because I want to be nothing but love. But,
Yeah.
you know, you also want to say, you know, I don't accept everything.
Yeah.
There seem to be fruitful unions.
Yeah.
And there seem to be fruitless unions. And
Yeah.
you can't say it's the same, because fruit, you know, I like a good apple. And it comes from a tree that produces fruit.
Yeah.
And I love the students. It's like, yeah, I'm glad your parents, a boy and a girl, got together, and I'm glad to have you here in this earth, this veil of suffering. So they're struggling with, but I love the ministry, and so there it is. There's my story.
Wow, Tom, this was great. You are going to let me share this, aren't you?
Yes, I wanted to not. I thought, if this really stinks, I'll really be upset.
I don't know how it was going to stink, Tom. I don't know. I can't imagine that.
I can muck things up, believe it or not. Yes.
Well, you didn't. Yeah. This was, you know, these randos conversations are, you just never know what you're going to have on the other end of, you know, because it's a wide open calendar and people sign up, and you just, it's a box of chocolates. You don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
But
it took me years to get back on that calendar.
Yeah, well, I know there's not that many slots, and they go immediately. So I'm sorry about that. It's just,
no, it's okay. I don't want to guilt you into.
No, but I do want to do more, but they are. Yeah. It's not just the time; it's the, I don't know what it is. Is it the anxiety? Is it the energy? I talk about it actually in the video I'm going to make today. It's that what's so difficult about this is that probably, you never know, but probably all we get right now is sort of a stub of a potential relationship, and that's so hard. Because I feel like, you know, I want to meet Melody, and I want to watch you preach, and I want to see your little church, and I want to see your see your kids, and I want to know, I want to meet these youths, and there's no, and that's again why I think, well, this is what heaven and our next life is for, where we're not bound by time in the way we are bound right now.
Yeah.
And what a tremendously wonderful thing to think about.
Yeah. So, hard to imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you, Tom. I'm so glad we finally had a chance to do this right. So
same.
Maybe we'll get a chance to do it again, or who knows. And maybe once, if I get my act together, we'll take the meetup show on the road, and I can go back on tour. And because that was great fun, the little tour that Job and John Van Dunk and I did. It got cut off by COVID, but
I'm all the way across the country, so you'd have to really
I love Pennsylvania. I spent a lot of time in Pennsylvania, driving between New Jersey and Grand Rapids, Michigan. So
it's
a beautiful state.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you, Tom. This was a delight.
Thank you.
So glad you got
I'll keep watching your videos.
All right. Well, God bless you and your ministry. Keep swinging for average.